caught off guard, make sure you prepare. Hurricane, earthquake, a tsunami. Fire and flood threaten your safety. Danger approaching, pay attention to the warnings and advisories. Your essential items packed and ready, so you won't be scrambling in an emergency. Prepare and be aware.
This message is brought to you by the Department of Emergency Management.
Welcome to Real Talk in the Face of Danger, a podcast series presented by the Department of Emergency Management. My name is Caroline Reid, the host for Season 3, and let's get right into it. Episode 1. Today we're going to be talking about the sargassum story, navigating the impacts and opportunities right here in Barbados. And today we have with us a very special guest, the Chief Fisheries Officer, Dr. Shelly-Ann Cox. Welcome, of course, and thank you for joining us. So we're talking sargassum. I guess the first logical question is, what exactly is sargassum seaweed?
Yes, well, Sargassum seaweed is a species of brown seaweed, and we get, natans and floatans here, but really and truly is something good when it's out to sea. Of course, it's, a habitat for fish, small lobsters. It's a very productive ecosystem. Actually, in the North Atlantic, the Sargasso Sea is protected because of the habitat and the diversity that it has with it. But since 2011, we have been experiencing this maritime menace referred to as Sargassum influxes. So we say sargassum when we're referring to it as a seaweed, and we said Sargassum influxes when we think about the sheer mass of volume coming into and beaching itself. And it's over a decade now that we have been fighting with this crisis. And along the timeline of that particular inundations we've been experiencing, in the beginning, it was a shock. We didn't have the answers. A lot of science had started to find out where exactly it was coming from. We figured out it wasn't coming from the north. It was coming from the tropical Atlantic. And since then, we would have worked in terms of forecasting systems, but then understanding the sectors and how they're impacted, and realizing that it was a multi-sectoral hazard. Some people refer to it as a coastal hazard. And I think from about 2015, we started to see some innovators actually using sargassum to create products and services. So I think, before we've talked about turning the sargassum crisis into gold and, seeing it as that gold mine, but still we have a lot of very nascent innovations, and we haven't seen them scale up because of certain challenges, lack of regulatory frameworks that they could actually make an impact on the influxes that we're experiencing. And now I think it's about 50 countries worldwide that are now experiencing sargassum influxes on an annual basis.
Okay, that's, you touched on a lot of different points there. I guess one of the first things is, you talked about it being across the board impacting not just fisheries, but Barbados being a tourism destination. How has that impacted our tourism product?
Yes, well, everybody doesn't want to see their white sand, pink sand beaches marred by brown seaweed. And they are tourists who are booking their destination and trips. And they're asking hoteliers well in advance if they expect sargassum influxes. And some persons have reported some booking cancellations. I remember being at a forum where the manager of a hotel on the South Coast would have communicated that they're now managing expectations and putting that messaging within their welcome so that people can understand. Places like Eastern hotels have been shuttling tourists to the West Coast because our West Coast has been thankfully spared most years, and there is that logistical addition now to the services that they offer. So the hotel sector tourism businesses have been significantly impacted. I believe it was Professor Hilary Beckles who said that it's the single greatest threat to tourism in the Caribbean, sargassum influxes. And being at some tourism forums speaking about sargassum, some are interested in, seeing how they can integrate potential cosmetic products from sargassum into their hotel offerings as well. So I think there's a genuine interest to really explore it as an opportunity and integrate that within the tourism sector. But they are spending a lot in terms of cleaning beaches. We went through that period where persons were using very heavy machinery and excavators to clean the beaches, and then we realized that that was impacting on coastal erosion, affecting turtle nests as well. So then persons have been using more manual methods as well as some technology as it relates to using the sargassum barriers at sea and doing some offshore harvesting.
Okay. Now, that's twice you mentioned that, so I'm glad you did as well, because, with threats there are also opportunities. So what are some of the opportunities? And, you mentioned a gold mine at some point, people refer to it as a gold mine. You mentioned beauty products just now. What are some of the things that you have seen yourself pop up in terms of the byproducts of sargassum and what people are using and the innovations that they're using it for?
Yeah, so in Barbados, we boast that we have a few innovators here producing plant biotonics. There is a university team, Dr. Henry, with rum and sargassum, using rum wastewater, sargassum, and sheep manure to make biogas, and then looking at the compressed natural gas to fuel cars. And they have been scaling up their pilot significantly with some exciting news. And then we had another innovator exploring bioplastics. So this is all in Barbados. Mexico still remains the hub for innovation as it relates to sargassum products. We have several colleagues over there experimenting from paper. Persons try cardboard as well. There's Sarcreto that did concrete. There is Omar from Blue Green. He's doing Sarga blocks. So construction materials. We have a team in the University of Antilles. This will be in the French Caribbean. They have been exploring activated carbon for quite some time. Nobody yet was doing anything algae apparel related, but it's definitely an interest of some of the innovators we've spoken to. And I think one of the interesting discoveries of late is out of Cuba in terms of using the high value extracts from sargassum in terms of antiviral agents to fight viruses like that cause meningitis. And I think there has been, in Mexico, there was some extraction of an antiviral agent, which you refer to as phacoidins, which was polysaccharides and all the extra things you get out of sargassum. And they used it on COVID-19 patients as well. So that is, I think some of the great work that is happening. Unfortunately, they haven't commercialized these products yet. But definitely a lot of interest in the nutraceutical and pharmaceutical industry.
Very exciting and interesting for sure. Now, I mean, obviously you are the Chief Fisheries Officer, so we have to talk fishing, right? Of course. We're here at the fish market as well in Bridgetown. So tell us a little bit about how over the last, you mentioned 2011 when the influx really started, how has that really affected the fisheries department?
Yes, well, the sector in general, and Barbados is the land of the flying fish, and since 2011, we've been seeing like a decrease of 52% in our flying fish landings. There were some articles suggesting that Barbados might become the land of the amberfish, which is a fish we started to see in the sargassum maps. But we know that we hold true, and flying fish is ours. It's on our dollar coin, and it's a deep part of our culture. But that was very impactful as it relates to that. There was also decreased landings for dolphin fish, which is another species that has commercial value. And, there were some, negative people assume that climate change and sargassum is a symptom of climate change, but that didn't mean that the flying fish stocks have declined. Traditionally, we use a screeler, which is sugarcane trash, to attract the flying fish. And before they, when they come to the screeler to spawn on, they'll be caught in the gill net. So now they're spawning all on the sargassum mats. So if you have sargassum mats to spawn on, you're not going to be attracted to the gear. So it's really the catchability of the flying fish that was impacted. And we did have some boats, some longline boats, and longline boats target the high-priced tuna for export to United States of America, especially for the sushi industry. But while out there at 300 miles from shore, they saw flying fish. And that was one boat I remember in particular that landed 30,000 flying fish last year. And 30,000 flying fish used to be an average catch for one of our ice boats. And now, this year, because the influxes have been quite mild, we've been seeing some 16,000, 20,000, but not yet back to where we were. And then the thing about flying fish too is flying fish does, trickle down the fisheries value chain. I mean, there are all the women employed in boning the flying fish, the vendors and so on, whereas larger fish like tuna, the export company would be doing most of the processing and exporting it more or less whole without the head and the guts. But flying fish involves both men, women, families. You have some fishing communities that they're still processing flying fish at home. It's all about social capital and bonding, and that's one of the fisheries, that more or less nurture and, interweave that social fabric we have in Barbados in our coastal communities. So that's another reason I'm quite passionate to say that, flying fish, yes, we want to explore alternative fisheries, but, home drum beats first. And I think what we've been trying to promote is innovation in terms of how do we change our fishing gear now to target that, or how do we use science and traditional knowledge to target the fish, use the satellite imagery so we would know where the sea surface temperatures are best and where the chlorophyll is, so that we can track the flying fish stocks and target them responsibly. Thankfully, flying fish is still one of the sustainable stocks. It's fast growing, it's short lived, it only lives for about a year. Dolphin fish as well is fast growing and short lived as well, 18 months. So these have been sustainable stocks that we have come to rely on. And when people think about sustainable fisheries and being socially responsible in the fish species that you purchase and eat, those kind of fish species we intend to promote. There has been some impacts for our divers as well. Persons reporting skin irritations, the bubbles of the sargassum getting into their ears. There has been, of course, people not being able to access their boats because of the influxes at landing sites. Sargassum in their engine propellers, overheating the engines. Even at sea, when I go fishing, one time we were caught in a mat, and then, you constantly put out your line, you think you have a fish, but then it's just a whole set of sargassum. And a lot of the longliners have reported some loss in gear as well too. So there are, in fact, a lot of negative impacts into fisheries, but positive as well too. We've been seeing a lot of smaller lobsters coming in with the sargassum, the amber fish that we never saw before. At that life stage, we started to see. I think it also I wouldn't say force people, but in terms of coping strategies, people having to become more creative. It happened during COVID in terms of when we saw persons marketing themselves, selling to people at home, using the technologies, using websites. So that in itself really, I would say, was a catalyst for innovation. Another good thing that we've seen too is the use of digital technologies by our stakeholders to support not only their own marketing, but as we, as the Fisheries Division, try to roll out our programs for digital transformation.
So some, again, negative and positives at the same time.
Yes.
Right, so you mentioned some of the impacts on divers. In terms of recreational, just regular average beachgoer, how has sargassum over the past few years affected their recreational beach activities?
Yes, well, I know some people do love the sargassum. I enjoy diving under it and looking up to see the sun pass through, but a lot of people, they don't want it touching their legs and so on, as you know, similar to the divers with the irritations. Some beachgoers have reported that. And we see people, you know, canceling their visits to the beach. I think what I love to see in Carlisle Bay on Saturdays is, you know, everybody going to do swimming lessons and such like. And, you know, that was impacted a bit. But I think now there is the curiosity of, you know, seeing kids pick up the sargassum. It's an opportunity for them to try to distinguish between one species and the next, the fluotans and the natans, where the natans has a narrower leaf. And, you know, we've been seeing even what referred to as morphotypes. So the natans now comes in these other special types that we've been seeing down this side, but they're not seeing in the north. So it's a lot of ways to try to engage budding marine biologists and those persons that might be interested in just exploring when they go to the beach. But I think it's also the stench that really has been impactful to not only beachgoers, but the coastal communities where they live. When it's decomposing, it releases hydrogen sulfide, and that odor that you get isn't very nice. We had people, especially in the east, complaining of respiratory illnesses from that. A lot of studies, health related, have been done in the French Caribbean, and they themselves have instrumentation to actually measure the gas on the coastline. And persons have, you know, reported the electronics turning from silver to a very dark color. So we've been seeing those kinds of reports from coastal residents and beachgoers.
Thank you for joining us for this episode. And of course, you can stay tuned for more as we bring you more real talk in the face of danger, presented by the Department of Emergency Management. Now, of course, you can stay tuned for more. Just follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Check out our YouTube channel, and you can be in the know with Real Talk.